Marcus Chen waited at the terminal gate, palms slick with sweat as he clutched the digital contract that had eaten 3 years of his savings. When the transport doors finally slid open with a hiss, the woman who stepped out wasn't the radiant bride from the catalogue. She was limping, one eye swollen dark, her silvery skin supposed to shimmer like moonlight, dim and bruised in uneven patches. Nothing about her matched the glossy photos he'd memorized for months. She was Calithian, one of the few alien species that had opened limited marriage contracts with humans after their planet's economy collapsed. The documents called her Sarah. When their eyes met across the crowd, she didn't smile or approach. She just stood there, ethereal, silver hair drifting as if underwater, her gaze too large, too aware, studying him like she was deciding whether he was another monster, or maybe something else entirely. Marcus's heart pounded. This wasn't right. Every instinct screamed to call the agency, demand a refund, report the obvious breach of contract. But what came out of his mouth instead was softer than he meant. "What happened to you?" For a heartbeat, something flickered in her violet eyes, surprise, maybe fear. She took one careful step forward, winced, and answered in a fragile voice like wind chimes cracked by a storm, "The same thing that happens to all of us." The words hung there, heavy and confusing. Marcus remembered why he'd signed up 8 months ago, during the loneliest winter of his life, working maintenance on mining rigs at the edge of the Centui colony. Human women were rare, connections rarer, and the agency's pitch about companionship and cultural exchange had felt like hope instead of business. He'd convinced himself it could be real, that arranged marriages had worked before, that maybe he and this alien woman could build something genuine. Now, staring at her battered form, his stomach turned. "Come on," he said quietly, reaching for her single bag, and froze when she flinched at his movement. "Let's get you home. You need medical help." The ride back was silent except for the hum of the transport and her sharp breaths when they hit bumps. Marcus kept stealing glances, her 2 long fingers tipped with pearly nails, faint scales along her jaw catching the light, the stillness in her body as if even breathing hurt. When they reached his small 2-room unit, it suddenly felt smaller. She scanned the space, unreadable. "It's not much," he started, but she cut him off softly. "It's quiet. No others, just you." Relief laced her voice. Marcus nodded. "Just me." He hesitated, then spoke carefully. "I don't know what's going on, but you're safe here. Whatever you need, time, care, space. Or if you want to leave, I'll help you." She turned then, truly looking at him, and her eyes began to glow faintly, the signature bioluminescence of her kind. "You'd let me leave? You paid 40,000 credits. I know what I cost." Her bluntness hit him. "You're not property," Marcus said firmly. "I don't care what the contract says." She gave a short, broken laugh. "Then you're the first human who feels that way." Sarah turned toward the window, her reflection pale against the rust-colored skyline of the colony. When she spoke again, her voice was steadier, edged with something like resignation. "Do you know how the Calithian marriage program really works, Marcus? Not the version they sell in the ads, the talk about cultural exchange and mutual benefit." Marcus shook his head, a dull ache building in his stomach. She kept her gaze on the horizon. "When the corporations destroyed our economy, they offered aid, but it came with strings. One of those strings was access to Calithian women for the labor colonies. Places like this, where men outnumber women 10 to 1. They call it marriage. We call it selling the desperate." Her tone was calm, but each word hit like a blade. "My family needed money for my sister's treatment. I volunteered." She turned to face him then, her skin pulsing faintly with light, a physical echo of her emotion. "But the agency isn't what it claims. It's part of a syndicate. They don't just arrange marriages. They prepare us. Break us." Marcus's breath caught as she lifted her shirt just enough to show the bruises and small puncture marks along her ribs. 3 weeks in their so-called training center. They said it was cultural orientation, language lessons. But it was conditioning, fear, obedience, silence. They wanted us compliant. Marcus felt fury rise, hot and shaking. "That's not training, that's trafficking," he said. "We can report this, expose them." Sarah let out a bitter laugh. "To who?" The syndicate funds half the colonial authority. They provide essential services. No one's going to care about a few alien girls desperate enough to sell themselves. She stepped closer then, her scent faintly electric, something like ozone mixed with wildflowers. But they underestimated us, she whispered. My people have an ability humans don't know about. We can share memories, transfer them through touch. Every woman they hurt, every crime they committed, we recorded it. 23 of us, all in that facility. We know everything. Marcus stared, stunned. You're gathering evidence, he said slowly. She nodded. We're planted in colonies across the sector, collecting data, waiting for the right time to expose the entire operation. Her eyes locked on his. But I need time. I need safety. I need someone who'll make my cover look real. Can you give me that? Every rational part of him screamed to walk away, to protect himself from whatever this was. But he saw the defiance in her face, the courage under all that pain, and knew his answer before he spoke. Yes, he said quietly. Tell me what you need. Sarah's expression softened for the first time. Pretend we're normal. Go to work. Live your life. Don't ask questions. And if anyone from the syndicate comes to check, tell them I'm exactly what you paid for. Her voice wavered slightly. Can you lie for me, Marcus? He stepped forward, slow enough not to startle her. I'm not much of a liar, he admitted. But for this, for you, I'll learn. The days that followed felt strange, quiet, like learning to breathe again in unfamiliar air. Marcus went to work every morning, fixing machinery in the colony mines, pretending his life was normal. When he came home, Sarah was usually there, typing furiously in Calithian script or sitting cross-legged in that eerie meditative state her people were known for, hovering an inch above the floor, eyes glowing like twin stars. She barely spoke those first few days. She moved like a ghost through his home, eating little, sleeping even less. Marcus gave her space but couldn't stop noticing the small things, how she never turned her back to the door, how she flinched at sudden sounds, how her fingers brushed objects like she was memorizing them. He realized this was what survival looked like. A week passed before the first test came. A syndicate agent, sharp-eyed, cold-smiled, named Torres, showed up unannounced. Routine welfare check, she said, stepping into the unit without waiting for permission. How's your bride, Mr. Chen? Satisfied with your purchase? Marcus forced a smile, feeling Sarah tense behind him. She's perfect, he said evenly. Everything I hoped for. He reached back and took her hand, slow and deliberate. Her skin was cool and smooth, almost electric to the touch. Torres's gaze lingered on them both, a predator's patience behind polite words. Good, she said at last. Contract violations are costly. We wouldn't want to repossess her. Then she was gone, leaving the air thick and poisonous. Sarah collapsed into a chair the moment the door shut, trembling. That woman, she whispered, she was at the facility. One of the ones who, her voice cracked. Marcus knelt beside her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. She can't hurt you here, he said quietly. Not while I'm breathing. Sarah's lips twitched, a ghost of a smile, but her words were weary. You can't promise that. Still, she didn't move away. Something shifted after that day. Sarah began to speak more. She told him about her world, how Calithians sang through patterns of light as well as sound, how she missed her little sister, Lyra, whose medical treatments depended on the credits from this contract. Marcus listened, shared his own ghosts, the brother he'd lost in an accident, the years of isolation that followed, the quiet ache that had driven him to this lonely corner of space. They found a rhythm, fragile but real, her making tea with herbs that smelled like rain, him cooking dinners that suited her strange metabolism. Evenings passed in companionable silence, two broken souls finding a kind of peace neither had expected. And slowly, trust began to bloom between them. Over the next few weeks, Sarah started letting Marcus see pieces of her secret world. Late at night, after the colony's lights dimmed, she showed him encrypted messages flickering across her console, threads of communication between Calithian women scattered across different outposts. Each of us gathers what we can, she explained, her eyes glowing softly. Financial records, testimonies, names. The syndicate hides behind layers of legality, but we're unraveling them one by one. Marcus couldn't help feeling proud. This woman who'd arrived in pain was now a quiet storm, gathering strength in the shadows. But he also knew what she was risking. When this goes public, he warned, they'll come after you. After all of you. Sarah nodded. We know. That's why when we send the data, most of us will disappear, new identities, new worlds. The cause matters more than the cost. The thought of her leaving hit him harder than expected. You'll have to go, he said softly. It was always the plan, she replied, though her voice wavered. This isn't real, Marcus. You and me. I can't let you think. Don't, he cut in, sharper than intended. Don't tell me what's real. You don't get to decide that. The air between them crackled with something unspoken. After that night, their silence changed. It wasn't distance anymore, it was tension, awareness. He caught her watching him sometimes, eyes glowing faintly, unreadable. And he found himself memorizing everything about her, the tilt of her head when she was deep in thought, the way her laughter sounded like crystal shards. Marcus realized he was falling for her, had been, since the moment she'd limped off that transport, defiant and afraid all at once. But love wasn't part of the plan. It couldn't be. Then, one evening, everything shattered. Marcus came home to chaos, his unit wrecked, furniture overturned, Sarah's equipment smashed to pieces. Two large men held her, their uniforms unmistakably syndicate issue. A third man sat calmly in Marcus's chair, dressed in corporate black, eyes like polished glass. Mr. Chen, he said smoothly. I'm Director Kane. It seems your bride has been busy espionage, data theft, conspiracy. Very serious crimes. Marcus's pulse thundered. He wasn't a fighter, but the sight of Sarah, blooded again, trembling but unbroken, ignited something fierce in him. I don't know what you're talking about, he said evenly. She's been here, living quietly. Maybe your intel's wrong. Kane's smile vanished. Don't insult me. We've monitored her network for weeks. The only question is whether you're her dupe or her accomplice. He looked at Sarah. Her eyes, swollen but fierce, met his. She gave a tiny shake of her head. Don't. For once, Marcus didn't listen. She's my wife, he said clearly. Whatever she did, we did together. Kane's face hardened. Then you'll die together. The enforcers moved fast, reaching for their weapons. Marcus didn't think, he lunged, pure instinct, knowing it was hopeless but refusing to stand still. And then Sarah screamed. It wasn't fear this time, it was fury. Her entire body ignited, flooding the room with blinding light. The air cracked with energy, and the men staggered back, shielding their eyes. Run, she shouted, wrenching free. But Marcus was already grabbing her hand. Together they bolted through the smoke and alarms, sprinting down the corridor as chaos erupted behind them. Red lights flared. Sirens wailed. Her bioluminescence pulsed brighter with every step, painting the walls in ghostly silver. He led her into the maintenance tunnels, his territory. The maze of pipes and conduits twisted deep beneath the colony, and her glow became their only light. Their breath came ragged, their boots splashing through puddles. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew louder, shouts, gunfire, heavy boots. There was nowhere left to run. Marcus dragged her into a narrow alcove, pressing close, hearts pounding. Listen, he whispered, whatever happens, I don't regret any of it. You made me feel alive again. His voice shook but didn't break. Sarah stared up at him, eyes luminous with tears. You foolish human, she murmured. I wasn't supposed to care about you. This was survival, not love. But somewhere between your clumsy kindness and your awful cooking, she smiled weakly. You became something I didn't expect. She reached for him, fingers trembling. In my language, there's a word, Kersol. It means the one who truly sees you. You see me, Marcus. Not a contract. Not a victim. Me. Then she kissed him, brief, desperate, full of light and sorrow. The echoes of approaching footsteps broke them apart. I have an idea, Sarah said suddenly, her voice fierce again. But you have to trust me. Before he could answer, she placed both palms on his face. A rush of heat and color slammed through his mind, memories, sensations, pain, and love all at once. He saw everything: the facility where she'd been broken, the syndicate's leaders, the faces of her sisters, the hidden data caches across the colonies. Her entire mission poured into him like a flood. He staggered, gasping. "What did you?" "Insurance," Sarah said. "If they take me, you still have everything. Find Dr. Elise Chen at the medical facility. She's sympathetic. Promise me you'll finish this." He gripped her shoulders, refusing to let go. "We'll finish it together." But even as he said it, the tunnel filled with harsh white light and the cold voice of Kane. "Enough running. Secure them both." The next moments blurred: Sarah's scream of defiance, a flare of searing light, Marcus fighting blindly, the sting of a stun blast, then blackness. When he woke, he was alone. Marcus woke in a detention cell, head throbbing, throat raw from shouting. The force field hummed faintly, trapping him in sterile light. "Sarah," he yelled until his voice broke. No answer. Then a guard's voice crackled through the intercom, bored and cruel. "The alien's been transferred. Syndicate custody. You'll be charged as an accomplice." He sank to his knees, fists bloody from pounding the wall. They'd taken her back to the people who'd already broken her once. This time, they wouldn't let her live. The thought almost crushed him until he remembered the flood of memories she'd given him, the name she'd whispered, Dr. Elise Chen. His cousin. Marcus forced himself to think. What would Sarah do? She'd watch, wait, calculate. So he did. He noted the guard's patterns, the flicker in the force field aging tech, poorly maintained. 12 hours later, during a shift change, he shorted it out with a metal food tray. Then he was gone, running through service corridors, stealing a uniform, blending into the morning crowd. When he reached the medical facility, Elise was older than he remembered, tired but sharp. "Marcus," she breathed. He pulled her into an exam room and locked the door. "Do you know anything about the Calithian program?" he demanded. Her eyes darkened. "What do you know?" "Everything," he said, tapping his temple. "Proof of trafficking, torture, corruption, all of it. But they took Sarah. We have to get her back." Elise hesitated, then nodded. "We've been building a case for years. A network, security officers, journalists, even other contract brides. But without evidence, we had nothing. Until now." In the frantic hours that followed, they gathered allies, miners tired of exploitation, medics who'd seen too many broken women, reporters hungry for truth. 8 hours before lockdown, they struck. Marcus led a team through the tunnels beneath Syndicate headquarters, his mechanical knowledge finally useful. They found Sarah strapped to a chair, her glow barely visible. Torres stood over her with a neural prod. "You should have stayed quiet," Torres hissed right before Marcus stunned her to the floor. He rushed to Sarah, freeing her restraints. "Can you walk?" "I can fight," she rasped, and did. Together, they freed 6 other Calithian women, uploading every scrap of evidence to the intersystem courts while journalists streamed the raid live. The world watched as the Syndicate's empire cracked open. Kane tried to run. Sarah stopped him with a burst of light that left him blind. It was over, at least here, at least for now. Days later, Marcus found her on the medical roof, healed and luminous under the stars. "You're leaving," he said quietly. She nodded. "To testify. To see my sister. She'll live now, Marcus. Because of this." He tried to smile. "I understand." But Sarah stepped closer, taking his hands. "No more contracts. No more running. When this is over, come to Calith. They need engineers. I need you." Hope flared in him, soft and steady. "You're asking me to follow you across the galaxy?" "I'm asking you to choose me," she said. Freely. Months later, when the trials ended and Sarah emerged with her sister bright-eyed, alive, Marcus was waiting with 2 tickets to Calith. He stumbled over her language but managed the words. "Carethel, will you show me your world?" Her smile lit the plaza. She didn't need to answer aloud. As their ship rose toward the stars, Marcus looked at her hand in his and thought of everything that had led here. Loneliness turned to purpose, a transaction turned into love, an arrangement turned into revolution. She looked back, eyes glowing softly. Thank you for seeing me, she whispered. Always, he said. And meant it.